Is Geoff Keighley going to be forced to kneel? Because I've seen a lot of people come out and call this their game of the year and calling for Deep Cut to do a musical performance at the Game Awards. There's clearly like quite a lot of demand for it. And you just know that Geoff is like sweating because he knows he's not going to be able to get Nintendo to do anything. He knows that Nintendo's not going to show up to his event, not after he disrespected them in 2023 with like giving The Last of Us HBO best movie adaptation over the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Okay. That level of disrespect should be studied. Like, they're not going to forget that. They're never going to come back. They're never going to, like, take this show seriously again. And they shouldn't. Like, absolutely 100% no. And yet, looking at like Metacritic and looking at fan responses, there is no denying that Splatoon Raiders is not only Game of the Year worthy, not only is it the hot new thing on Switch 2, not only is this huge success story that everyone's talking about, it also features its own musical group, Deep Cut. So much so that people are outright asking Deep Cut to make an appearance at the Game Awards. Outside of game trailers, the most memorable thing about these showcases is the musical numbers. They always get people going up there to do the flavor of the month song, whether it's like Devil Trigger or the Expedition 33 theme or like whatever. They always go up there, pretend like it's popular or relevant. People celebrate it, and that's the end of that. You never hear it again. But like this year, it seems like the most popular musical group in gaming is Deep Cut. And you can't like try and write them off and try and say that like, oh, there are no good tracks in the game. There's nothing to do at the Game Awards. They could legit probably get away with like writing new music just for the Game Awards, because they do that all the time for like, for the Grand Festival and like for all the things they've done over the years. Like, the Splatoon team kills it when it comes to their idol groups and their music. Like the Grand Festival was better than like real live concerts in a lot of ways. So Geoff is in a really rough position where clearly the demand for the big musical presentation for this year's Game Award is a Nintendo exclusive title, Deep Cut, right? Like this is like the big musical group of the year, and yet Nintendo will not allow him to use them. They're not going to like whore out Deep Cut in order to like try and get like some attention at the Game Awards. It's just not going to happen. They're going to have their own event. They're going to like do in-game stuff. Like they don't fucking need Geoff. And I think that's just like the reality of it. When you look at like how successful the Switch 2 has been, when you look at what they tried to pull last year with Expedition 33, when you look at like how many games that were announced at the Game Awards that have just been canceled over the past year, like what you're seeing is proof positive that the Game Awards is a failing show with no real cultural impact or influence at all, and that we're better off just kind of ignoring it. Nintendo threw Geoff a bone over the past decade with like, announcing giving that Breath of the Wild footage and announcing Joker in Smash back in the day. But like, what did they get out of that? Like they got a big knife in the back where Geoff just refused to acknowledge that Nintendo was dominating this generation. Okay. He has done everything he possibly can over the past 3 years to downplay Nintendo, to ignore them, while still like begging them to show up to his events. And I say it should not happen under any capacity. Nintendo and other companies need to starve the beast. This guy, this Joker, is responsible for some of the worst things to happen in gaming over the past decade. Okay, Geoff is absolutely the only thing propping the traditional gaming industry sphere, journalism sphere up. And without him, the entire grift just kind of collapses. The Game Awards has been the only outlet that anyone pays attention to anymore, because for a while there, YouTubers and influencers were able to gaslight people into thinking it was like some non-biased, like nonpartisan thing when it very clearly isn't. Like, this cannot be allowed to continue. And it is very important for Nintendo fans to always remind people what Geoff tried to do. Like, it is very important that we not take this show seriously, even if we win, and to constantly address the fact that games like Tears of the Kingdom, like Xenoblade Chronicles 2, like countless others, have remained far more relevant than the titles that Geoff has tried to shill people over the years. Like, the simple fact of the matter is, the Game Awards is not a very good representation of what is actually happening in gaming culture. Like, the simple fact of the matter is, Nintendo has been dominating all generation long, and yet the Game Awards has done everything it possibly can to try and bury it. Like, it has been embarrassing what they've tried to do over the past couple of years, and it is high time that people start acknowledging what a problem they are. I know people like the idea of Deep Cut showing up on a, such a big stage and like being such a big deal in America, but like, I think there are better ways to do it than to show up at the Game Awards. You know what I mean? Like, they already have like Japanese like VTuber like like actual concerts. They do this stuff with the Splatoon characters like in Japan all the time. So like, it's only a matter of time until it comes out over here and becomes a thing. But it doesn't need it to be at the fucking Game Awards. That's not the venue for that. Like, the audience isn't going to give a shit. They're going to think it's cringy. It's, if anything, I would argue that would set the IP back years, right? Like, maybe it would like condition people to like be more into the idea, but like, I don't think they really need to do it. And honestly, I think it's way more important to discredit the Game Awards, just starve them of content, and not try and like meet them halfway at all. And I'm very pleased with Furukawa, because I think Iwata would have like constantly tried to like appease the Westerners and try to give them a bit more leeway. Like, no, like, fuck them. Like, the reality is, these guys have in a lot of cases like revolved their entire careers around like downplaying and ignoring Nintendo games. So why exactly should Nintendo do such give them such a huge bone? Like, why exactly should they give them Deep Cut, even for like just one performance or one appearance or like whatever? Like, why exactly should they do that? And the answer, I think, is that they shouldn't. Like, I think Deep Cut is too good for the Game Awards. I think Deep Cut could probably carry their own concerts across the US. I think they are big enough for that. Like, I do think that Nintendo is well on its way to making Splatoon a huge success in spite of the Game Awards, like endlessly trying to downplay and ignore them. Like, and we're going to see firsthand like how Geoff's actions of cocksucking PlayStation have come back to bite him, because over the next couple of years, Nintendo Switch 2 is going to explode in popularity. It's going to get dozens of games that far outstrip Grand Theft Auto 6 in relevancy. And meanwhile, Geoff is just going to go on Twitter and just tweet about the release dates for like God of War Laufey and like Wolverine. Like, aren't you excited for this, guys? Like, I sure am. Yeah, because Sony is paying you to promote them. It's just the reality of it. Like, Geoff really is, in a lot of ways, the last game journal. And like, I do think the only reason he has that status is because of his family's IMAX fortune. Like, it has nothing to do with his game journalism skills or the Game Awards. It's just that he's been so heavily subsidized by another industry, the film industry. Geoff Keighley is an example as to everything what's wrong with gaming, in that they would rather be the film industry. They would rather have Harrison Ford get on stage to promote like Indiana Jones than they would in like, promoting the new guy or like, pushing him. Like, they're too rooted in this idea that film is a superior, more respectable industry, and they haven't really managed to celebrate gamer culture at all. In short, even if Geoff was like supportive of Nintendo and actually, wanted deep cut there. Like the simple fact of the matter is like his audience, his demographic, his people, like it just wouldn't resonate with them because they don't know anything about the characters, they don't know anything about Splatoon, right? They wouldn't know how to promote or market them or like promote Splatoon as a brand or the game they're a part of. Like the simple fact of the matter is like putting deep cut in the Game Awards would do absolutely nothing for Nintendo at all, other than like maybe devalue the brand among like certain people. Like I think the whole suggestion, the whole idea is ridiculous, and we really do have to toss it out the window. Now, what should be understood is that Deep Cut is going to be quite a bit better than whoever they do get. Like, they're going to get, like, the singer of, like, I don't know, the Grand Theft Auto 6 theme song or whatever on there. She's going to sing it probably. You're going to see people, like, try and, like, they're going to have an orchestra there playing generic, like, noise. You're going to see people just kind of, like, just doing everything possible to like try to distract you from the fact that like Deep Cut, the biggest name in video game music this year, is not at this event. Like this event is simply not a big enough deal for Deep Cut to attend. Like it's just a lesser brand. It's like that one time where they had like Metroid Dread, and like they did the orchestra and then they played a bunch of like generic sounding like soundtracks and then they transitioned into the Metroid theme, which is like way more badass and way more epic and way more cool. Like it's going to be kind of like that, where like Nintendo music is, without even trying, going to be way bigger than like whatever slop the industry tries to push. And I think that's the trend, in that like nobody really remembers the Expedition soundtrack or like the Baldur's Gate 3 soundtrack or the Elden Ring soundtrack, and yet like Nintendo is Heart of Gold and like everything they've been doing lately, it's just been absolute banger after banger. And there's just nothing that Jeffy can do to stop it. So what do you think about all of this? What do you think about the possibility that Deep Cut could be in the Game Awards? Please let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to the channel, like, comment, subscribe, and consider buying my book through my website, harmansmithbooks.com. I will see you all next time.